Hey, greetings from a little sunny spot in a Sunshine Canyon, which you will forget I ever said there was a canyon that I was from. Okay, so today we're going to talk about running more in the frontal plane. We've had two videos on sort of the sides, shifting forward, your center of mass, being able to wiggle your toes, sort of not being a zombie, being more angel. And now we're going to get into what's important in running in the frontal plane. But before I commence, just a little public service announcement. Rule number one. Never ever attach yourself or your identity to something that can be taken away from you. Okay? So if you're a 4-foot sucking in core ultra runner, be careful, because if that's your persona and that's your identity and that's what you attach to, and you're not likely to change your opinions and you're not likely to think well. So choose your names and your hashtag very, very clearly. Okay, that's 101, the most important rule. Because what's really, really important is that you are able to express your authentic self and you are not dictated to, and you're not imprinted to by the world. We here at Inner Runner are about authentically showing up and expressing our purpose. And this is not a running technique. I'm not trying to teach you how to run. I'm trying to teach you how to move so that you can go and express your running. Okay? It's not this technique versus that technique. It's thinking very, very clearly about how we get to show up and authentically express ourselves. Okay? If you see someone standing like this with really, really good posture, it's not because they bridged or planked or did some technique or agoscu or I don't know, upside down bat boot hanging. It's because they are comfortable in their skin and they stand here with purpose and with something to give and show to the world. Okay? With trust, with open-heartedness. That's how you got to run. That's the technique. Right, let's get going. So from the front, probably the most important thing you need to know is head over foot. Why? There's the myth of keeping your hips still. So I'm going to walk towards you and I'm going to really use my hips. Yeah, I know, I've got a bit of a swagger. How do we know that I'm really using my hips? They look pretty stable, right? How do I know they're really active and animated? Watch my shoulders, okay? So really functioning hips, watch my hips now. Really functioning hips, look how much they're moving, or not still or held or tight. They are big, loose, strong, animated pelvis, and it's reflected in shoulder movement. Capiche? So when we run, that's what we want to do. Why? Well, because it's how it rolls, but also because it keeps your back quiet. So if I'm using my animated hips when I walk backwards towards you, look how quiet my lower back is. Your lower back doesn't rotate when you run. Okay? It must be still and connected. The lower back is for side bending and bending forward and backwards, not for twisting. We don't want our upper body to work against our lower body. Okay? So if my hips do the rotation, my lower body can be quiet and my chest can be mobile. Okay? Lots of transverse movement, no transverse movement, lots of transverse movement. Or as Jay DeSherry said, running is twisting. Okay? Lots of twisting, no twisting, lots of twisting. Torque to generate power. So how do we have this animated dynamic hips? If you keep your head still in the midline and I stand on one leg, I'll tend to banana and I'll actually tend to tighten up, and believe it or not, my hip will probably drop, which is the exact thing most people are trying to avoid. Okay? Yes, I know, I just told you, if you keep your head in the midline, you're probably going to drop your hips. The second part of that is if I go on my forefoot, my adductors and hamstrings will get really, really tight, and my hip will get tight, and I will tend to fall back into my hip. So watch here. Here I stand on my forefoot. I'm going to kind of go back into my hip to stand up straight. So yes, I just said it. That is exactly what I said. If you load your forefoot and you keep your head in the midline, it's probably one of the reasons why your hips dropping. Tend to tighten, create tension, and that tension distorts us. Okay, so if you don't want to look like this in your next running photo, get your head over your standing leg. I can stand like this forever. So running from the front tends to be head over foot, or running from stability point to stability point, and that will keep this hip high. Okay, so it's really, really important. I'm exaggerating for camera use how much my head is moving from side to side. It just has to move a little bit. So you'll see, yeah, some people's heads don't move a lot, some people's do. It's It's one of the reasons we practice the flow rope, head over foot, but also it separates out your gait. So if you have a crossover gait, your feet cross over the midline. If you want to separate them out, the easiest way is to get your head over foot, and you go, oh, head over foot, head over foot. My feet have now opened up on the midline, and my tracking, my stability is much, much better. This really aligns with super shoes. If you want to run in super shoes, because they are higher off the ground, you need to stack properly, and you'll find it much, much easier to balance in your super shoe if you put your head over the standing leg. When your head's in the midline, you'll find you're going to dive in and want to roll in those super shoes and cause all sorts of alignment problems. And super shoes, I'll do a video on it, can be a fantastic feedback device, because one is you learn to stack them properly, or you're going to roll your ankle, and two is you learn to land, load, and bounce out of super shoes. And that's really, really good biofeedback. So one of the reasons everyone's running so well is not just the shoes, it's the fact that people have got into energy return, elastic energy return, and they're getting the maximum out of their super shoes, and the super shoes are actually modifying the way people run. And I'm here to future-proof you and show you how to get the maximum out of your body, your life, and your super shoes. And again, cannot stress this enough. You need to trust your body, learn to trust your body, and show up and express your authentic self. Okay, find someone that sees the best in you, that believes in the best in you, and literally by meeting them, you feel afterwards, I want to go out and do good and show up in the world, because that is going to help your running form more than anything else. Okay, so let's just wind this back where we at. Okay, so running from the front, the most important thing, head over foot, head over foot. If you're anterior chain, head over foot's okay. If you're posterior chain, head over foot's okay. Did a video yesterday about flow rope and anterior and posterior chain. We are after hip extension based gait. So that again applies this active pelvis, okay, and the heel as you travel forward, this heel that stays connected to the ground. So watch this. If I try this little trick, so I'm going to stand on one leg, head kind of over foot. I'm going to step this way, and then I'm going to step this way. So just transition between 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, but this whole leg's always on the ground. Heel and foot, heel and foot. You'll find it's easier if your head is over this foot, and you'll find it harder if your head is not over this foot. You won't transition from here, my leg is transitioning from external rotation into internal rotation. Okay, so when my head is over my foot, that is easy. When my head is not over my foot, it is hard. You got to work, you got to somehow push the ground away. You can figure out how the hell am I going to do this. When your head is over foot and you stack these joints in balance, it's easy. And the other thing is, if I go into my forefoot and go backwards to forwards, you'll find you have to sort of get up and over your hip, and it's actually difficult to transition from external rotation to internal rotation. And one of the reasons is the tension from the calf, your anterior chain, which is your medial adductors and hamstrings, gets up into your hips, and it kind of locks your hips in this pattern. So if you're the person that's running like this and then this foot flares to the outside, the solution is shake it out, whole leg, head over foot, and learn to trust that leg. And that's why we walk backwards so much. So walking backwards in this contralateral gait pattern, okay? Belly button towards lead leg, belly button towards lead leg. Walking backwards is belly button towards lead leg, belly button towards lead leg is really important. So that kind of summarizes all the things we want to see if we look at you from the front to the back. Quiet lower spine, active hips, which will reflect in active shoulders, and this hip being higher than the up leg will be higher than the standing leg, okay? Head over foot, and then contralateral gait pattern, belly button pointing towards the lead leg. Cool. I think that's about it for what we want to see from the front. And again, we practice these at home, we practice them with the rope, we work on our posture, we work on how we show up in the world, okay? My wish is for you is to be comfortable in your own skin, move from the center out, be creative. Think of movement as a creative act of self-expression. Don't be dictated to by people. Okay, it's absolute nonsense that you have a weak core, or weak glute medius, or someone stands there and gets to judge you. How we show up in the world is largely out of our control. You didn't choose your parents, you didn't choose your environment, you didn't choose the food you were given when you were a toddler, you didn't choose which school you went to. Almost 95% of your life happened to you without any form of agency from you. And most of us, we really function on autopilot. And once you start moving creatively and from the center out, you start to have agency to change your life and to create a better life and move better. But how I stand here is a reflection of my life and what's happening and going on around me. And it's not for someone to judge and say, well, I think you're doing this wrong, or I think you're doing that wrong. Okay? And also, I don't know, no one told Seabiscuit, hey, Seabiscuit, if you engage your core, or, hippos are the most deadliest mammals in Africa. Okay, have you seen a hippo's stomach? No one's telling the hippo, hey, you need to pull in your belly button to strengthen your spine. No one's telling a cheetah and a gazelle, or a leopard and a gazelle every morning, one of them's going to eat each other or survive, right? Imagine telling the gazelle, hey, gazelle, have you heard about this 4-foot running technique where you run on the tips of your hooves? Okay, it's just not how it works, okay? We want to get into the authentic things that matter. It's totally okay to use your whole foot. Zola Bud used the whole foot and ran barefoot. Don't get into techniques and fads and being told what you're doing wrong in your running, and like your hamstrings are bicep and you got to pick up your feet, and maybe you got to flatten your chest and put your head forward, engage this, turn this, tuck that. No, we decrease compensations out of our body. We learn the basics, the fundamentals. We learn decent structure. We play around with these things and we watch them and welcome them when they show up in our running. So move with confidence. Don't let anyone tell you you're not awesome, because you are totally awesome and you're totally worth it. Okay, take care everyone. Share, like, subscribe, or don't. Okay, take care.